Dorris Alexander. Dee Brown was an American novelist and historian. His most famous work, Bury My Heart at Wounded Knee, details the history of American expansionism from the point of view of the Native Americans' life. Born in Alberta, Louisiana, of Sawmill Town, Brown grew up in Washita County, Arkansas, which experienced an oil boom when he was 13. Brown's mother later relocated to Little Rock so he and his brother and two sisters could attend a better high school. He spent much time in the public library, reading the 3-volume history of the expedition under the command of Captains Lewis and Clark helped him develop an abiding interest in the American West. He also discovered the works of Sherwood Anderson and John Dos Passos, and later William Faulkner and Joseph Conrad. He cited these authors as those most influential on his own work. While attending home games by the Arkansas Travelers baseball team, he became acquainted with Chief Yellow Horse, a pitcher. His kindness, and a childhood friendship with a Creek boy, caused Brown to reject the portrayals of Indian peoples as violent and backward, which dominated American popular culture at the time. He worked as a printer and reporter in Harrison, Arkansas, and decided to continue his education at Arkansas State Teachers College in Conway, Arkansas. His mentor, the history professor Dean D. McBrien, helped set him on the road to becoming a writer. They traveled west along with other students on 2 occasions in a Model T Ford. On campus, Brown worked as editor of the student newspaper and held a student assistantship in the library. The latter convinced him that he should become a librarian. In the midst of the Great Depression, he set out for George Washington University in Washington, D.C. for graduate study. Brown worked part-time for J. Willard Marriott, took classes, and married Sally Stroud. Eventually he found a full-time position and became a librarian for the U.S. Department of Agriculture from 1934 to 1942. He lived at 1717 R Street, NW, in the DuPont Circle neighborhood. Brown's first novel was a satire of New Deal bureaucracy, but it was not published due to the bombing of Pearl Harbor. The publisher suggested something patriotic instead. He responded with Wave High the Banner, a fictionalized account of the life of Davy Crockett. A few months after its publication, he was drafted into the U.S. Army, where he met Martin Schmidt. After the war they collaborated on several works. During the war, Brown worked for the United States Department of War as a librarian and never went overseas. From 1948 to 1972, he was an agriculture librarian at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, where he had gained a master's degree in library science, became a professor, and raised a son, Mitchell, and daughter, Linda, with his wife Sally. As a part-time writer, he published 9 books, 3 fiction and 6 non-fiction, by the end of the 1950s. During the 1960s, he completed 8 more, including The Galvanized Yankees, which Brown described as requiring more research than any of his other books, and The Year of the Century, 1876, which he described as his personal favorite. In 1971, Bury My Heart at Wounded Knee became a bestseller. Many readers assumed that Brown was of Indian heritage, but he was not. He did come from a family with deep history on the frontier. In 1973, Brown and his wife retired in Little Rock, Arkansas, where he devoted his time to writing. His later works include Creek Mary's Blood, a novel telling of several generations of a family descended from one Creek woman, and Hear That Lonesome Whistle Blow, which described the chicanery and romance surrounding the construction of the Western railroads. His last book-length work, Wait a Bright Star, is a picaresque novel set during the Civil War. He never completed its sequel, which was to feature P. T. Barnum and Abraham Lincoln. Brown died at the age of 94 in Little Rock, Arkansas. His remains are interred in Urbana, Illinois, along with those of his wife Sally Stroud. Legacy and honors. The Central Arkansas Library System named a branch library in Little Rock, Arkansas for him. Partial bibliography. History's Fighting Indians of the West with Martin F. Schmidt. Trail Driving Days with Martin F. Schmidt. Grierson's Raid describes a Union foray into Confederate territory. Settlers West with Martin F. Schmidt. The Gentle Tamers, Women of the Old Wild West. The Bold Cavaliers. Morgan's Second Kentucky Cavalry Raiders, republished as Morgan's Raiders. Describes John Hunt Morgan's Civil War activities. The Fetman Massacre. The Galvanized Yankees, republished. Showdown at Little Bighorn. The Year of the Century, 1876. Bury My Heart at Wounded Knee. Fort Phil Kearny, An American Saga, republished as The Fetman Massacre. Andrew Jackson and the Battle of New Orleans. The Westerners. Hear that lonesome whistle blow about the Union Pacific Railroad. Wondrous Times on the Frontier. The American West, collected excerpts from earlier books co-authored by Schmidt. Great Documents in American Indian History. Novels Wave High the Banner. Yellow Horse. Cavalry Scout. They Went That Way, republished as Pardon My Pandemonium. The Girl from Fort Wicked. Action at Beecher Island. Creek Mary's Blood. Killdeer Mountain, a mystery revolving around an officer in the Battle of Killdeer Mountain. Conspiracy of Knaves, a Civil War historical saga about the Northwest Conspiracy. The Way to Bright Star. Other Tales of the Warrior Ants for Young People. American Spy. Hot Springs, Arkansas, An Illustrated History. Dee Brown's Folk Tales of the Native American, retold 4-hour times, originally published as Teepee Tales. When the Century Was Young, Memories of Growing Up in 1920s and AMP 1930s. Images of the Old West.